Coaching against Arizona, first time. What were your feelings?
Second time, once an exhibition.
Oh, but that doesn't count.
Did to me.
Does a coach who's used to coach the other team, is there any advantage because you've used to coach them for so long?
Maybe if you just left, but if you look at their roster, there's not much left from when I was there. So if it was last year that I was there and then left, you maybe could say you know them, but the majority of their players were either real young players or, there's only a few of them that are left there that when I was there. So I've been away from there for 2 or 3 years now. So it's time has changed things a little bit.
Obviously, it looks like based on morning skate, changed your top couple, possibly your top 3 lines. Just a thought specifically on maybe trying to get Chase on going.
Trying to get him going a little bit, just trying to shuffle some things trying to find a spark somewhere. We've got some guys that have come in and played a little better. JJ's played a little better here lately, so he's taken a bigger bite. But we're just, you go into every game, you just kind of trying to figure how things would be most efficient for you, and you're trying to maximize each player. So we're trying a couple tweaks today. We'll see how they work.
Just maybe 1 or 2 on Leon. As you have handed him minutes this year, what have you seen, when he gets high up into those 20s? And is he a player that recovers well and that you find can handle the minutes? And is that sustainable long term if it stays at this?
He can handle them, but there's too much. So it depends how the game goes. Like when you look at overtime games, like he was 23, I think, the other night, but in overtime you got to add 2.5 minutes on that overtime too, right? So overtime games tend to get stretched. I've tried to bring them back a little bit, but those guys are competitive guys. You look down the bench and they want to play. So they give you a pretty good chance of getting things done out there. So, but it's something we're going to monitor. Leon's he's a horse. I think he plays better the more he plays. Now that being said, there's been some times when he's played a lot where the pace of play comes down a little bit that we have to be aware of. But he's doing all right out there.
And maybe just a thought on the overall game. He's taken some pride in it, being used a little bit more defensively, some penalty kill stuff where you've relied on him heavily. What are you seeing in terms of the overall game that he gives you?
Well, if you're combining the penalty kill into it, he was a pretty good penalty killer last year too. He's a good face-off guy, so we've used him in that. I'd like to use him a little less there, but you get into critical situations where you look down the bench and you got to who's the best guy for the job, and he's sometimes the guy that gets that nod. 5-on-3, we talked about that last week. Those are lessons that I've learned along the way, that your top players can be good 5-on-3 against players, and he's embraced that role. Like he's a guy that he's a real interesting guy to talk to about the game. He's a student of the game. He's studied players before him and how they play. He's real thoughtful in how he wants to play or wants his game to be perceived, and real thoughtful how that game can translate into helping us win.
Dave, just back to Maddie's question for another shot. When you've coached some of the other team's players and know them, at least some of them, as well as you do you watch the game like tonight any differently when I know you're trying to run your own team behind the bench, but do you watch the other team any differently when you know those players so well?
No, you know who's out there, and I would watch more of them on video to prepare for them. But once you get in a game, you got lots to concentrate on your team and maximizing what you guys are doing. So, there's only, I'm trying to think. There's Oliver and Goligoski on the back. A few of the young guys, Fisher, Krause, Keller. They were just real young players coming in, they're good young players. But there's only 2 or 3 of the veteran guys that I would know well.
Dave, since Arizona started 0-2, they seem like they really have found their ground, especially in the goals against column. What's allowed them to be so successful in that regard, and also what kind of challenges does that pose for your club tonight?
Yeah, they're a good, hard-working team. Their goaltending is excellent. I think they have an underrated defense. Their D move the puck very well. I think Oliver Ekman Larsson is one of the top D in the league. He's He's a guy that plays big minutes and really an efficient player. So they're just a solid team. Rick's done a good job with that group, and they're a competitive team, real competitive team.
Is there anything that has surprised you on that team at all this season?
You know what? I watched a little bit of them the other day. That's about it. So haven't watched them that close, actually.
Dave, you mentioned their goaltending. Kemper's only allowed 3 goals once all year, and I think their team's now with the empty nets. That collective team defense, do you have to preach more of a patient game for your team, knowing that there's not going to be a lot of chances, or do you go the opposite and really try to get them behind the 8 ball early?
Yeah, I coach our team to play how we want to play. Not, you understand what the other team's doing. You understand, where they are and their strengths and weaknesses. But it's, to go in and say, okay, let's play really patient right now. Well, what if Arizona comes out and doesn't play a patient game, right? So you gear everything to your own group. You have a pretty good idea how everybody plays, and their personnel, and you look at their goaltending. This is 2 years now. Their goaltending's been strong, so you have to you build that into part of your game plan, whether it's lots of shots or traffic or whatever you want to do. Every game there's a method to the madness, but it's all geared towards our team. So you understand what they're doing, but it's geared towards us.
Shane, what's Shane's situation?
I think he would have the opportunity to play tonight, but he hasn't skated in 3 days now. So and Cody Cave played very well last game, so we left Cody in there tonight.
Well, it looks like Koskinen by the net, he was guarding this morning, might play.
Yeah.
Is this still a juggling act for you? You haven't gone more than 2 games, pretty much. Without
Not a juggling act. We have 2 good guys that we want to keep them both fresh and playing. So
the other guy was phenomenal last game. That's why I'm asking.
Phenomenal both last games, but Kosk was phenomenal games before that too. So we need them both to play well. Like both of them need to, and I think we've balanced that pretty good. We've only had the one back-to-back, but they both know the situation. Like we want them to be prepared and have practiced enough to feel at the top of their game and fresh enough to play. So that's we're going to stay with that as we go forward here.
Dave, early in the first 7 games, your power play was rolling, scoring a lot, but it's also shooting a lot. Last 8, your shot volume's gone down quite a bit. Is that a simple thing to just say shoot more, or what are you seeing recently on your PP that you don't like?
Yeah, I'd like to shoot more. You want to come in the meeting with them? I'll let them know that. Yeah. No, we haven't established enough shots. We're trying too many times. We want to make a really, really nice goal instead of just a goal. So that's and when you get high skilled players out there, that's what happens. But I agree with you on the shot volume isn't what it needs to be. So that's something that we'll continue to address. Thank you, Coach. Thanks, guys.